Empress Alara's voice died in the cavernous expanse of the obsidian spire. She didn't look at the United Stellar Federation diplomats or the glowing treaty suspended over the pedestal. Her eyes, dark, impossibly wide and stripped of all royal pretense, were locked on the security captain standing motionless by the grand pillars. The entire court stopped breathing. He felt the phantom heat of a 25-year-old fire crawl up his throat. She descended the dais, her ceremonial silks whispering against the polished floor, ignoring protocol and political consequence to stand inches from a man the galaxy insisted was dead. 3 hours earlier, Captain Kalen Vance had stood in the frigid air of that same spire, running tactical scans on the Asteris 4 perimeter. It was supposed to be a standard security detail, and the Federation and the Vesperan hegemony were finally ready to sign a historic non-aggression pact. But the deeper Kalen walked into the heart of the Vesperan palace, the more his pulse betrayed him. It was the palace's power core. It hummed with a low, bone-rattling frequency, an oscillation that vibrated right behind Kalen's teeth. He knew that sound. He had spent 2.5 decades trying to drink it away, run it away, shoot it away. It was the exact pitch of the soulless hub reactors right before the casing ruptured. Walking into the throne room behind the Federation delegates, Kalen's vision had started to slip. The soft, elegant glow of the Vesperan holobanners melted into the blinding flash of plasma fire. He smelled burning polymer. He felt the desperate, frantic grip of a terrified girl clutching his armor as the hub's promenade collapsed into a vacuum. They were told the universe burned everyone they loved. They were lied to. The official record stated there were 0 survivors. Yet here he was, breathing, hiding in the stiff collar of a ghost. And then the ceremony began. Empress Ilara had been speaking, her words a practiced melody echoing off the high stone walls. Then her gaze swept over the security detail and caught his. The words simply evaporated from her lips. She didn't ask for a recess. She stepped down from the throne, bypassing the confused ambassadors. Kalen stiffened, his knuckles white against his rifle strap. His heart hammered a frantic, desperate rhythm against his ribs. It turned out time didn't heal anything. It just buried the nerves under thicker skin. She stopped right in front of him, close enough that he could see the faint, jagged scar tucked just behind her jawline, the one the medical droids couldn't entirely erase, the one she got when a bulkhead shattered over them. "You," she whispered, the sound barely carrying past the static tension between them. It was a piece forged in the fires of a 25-year-old lie, and it was unraveling with a single look. The room erupted into panicked murmurs. Guards from both sides shifted, weapons half drawn, confused by the sudden breach in distance. Ilara reached out. Her fingers trembled just a fraction of an inch before pressing flat against the reinforced plating over his chest. She was searching for a heartbeat she hadn't felt since she was a teenager, choking on ash. The ghosts of soulless Hub have finally come to collect their debt. Clear the room," Ilara commanded, her voice suddenly finding its cold, imperial edge, though she never broke eye contact with Kalen. "The diplomatic proceedings are suspended. The captain and I require the private verification chambers. Now." The verification chamber was a lie. As soon as the heavy doors sealed shut, locking out the furious whispers of the delegation, Ilara bypassed the biometric scanners. She didn't want verification. She wanted the vault beneath them. Kalen followed her down the spiral stairwell into the spire's restricted archives, the air growing colder with every step. They didn't speak. The space between them was thick, heavy with 25 years of assumed funerals and unwritten letters. She led him to a massive terminal glowing with archaic code, her hands moving over the console with frantic precision. "Oh, and they said you burned in the lower atmosphere," she breathed, the pale light of the screen catching a tear she refused to let fall. "They said your shuttle was shot down on extraction," he replied. His voice was gravel. He watched her pull up the encrypted logs from the Solus Hub disaster. The files cracked open, spilling cold, clinical truths across the monitors. It wasn't an accident. It was a calculated detonation, a false flag operation approved by the highest ranks of both the Federation and the hegemony to justify 2 decades of border wars. They were collateral. Before Kalen could process the betrayal, the terminal flashed red. A localized alert screamed through the vault. On a secondary screen, altered surveillance footage from their chamber upstairs played on an endless loop, and heavily edited to look like a clandestine lover's tryst. The galactic net was already burning with it. Saboteurs were screaming that the peace talks were a compromised, staged romance. Then the floor gave way. The first orbital strike hit the palace's outer shielding. The impact threw Kalen against the console. He reached out blindly, grabbing Ilara by the waist and pulling her under the reinforced archway of the databank. The ceiling groaned, raining powdered stone over their shoulders. An extremist fleet had jumped into the system, bypassing the confused diplomatic blockades to bombard the spire. "We need to evacuate to the bunkers," Kalen shouted over the deafening roar of collapsing masonry. "No," Ilara said. She pushed out of his grip, her eyes blazing with a fierce, terrifying clarity. "If we run, Annie, the lie wins." She scrambled back to the terminal. The structural integrity alarms were shrieking, the walls vibrating so hard Kalen's teeth ached. He didn't pull her back. He stood beside her, his body acting as a physical shield against the falling debris as she routed the decrypted Solus logs through the palace's emergency broadcast system. Truth is, survival wasn't about outrunning the fire anymore. It was about making sure everyone saw who lit the match. They hit send just as a massive section of the upper floors caved in. Kalen wrapped his arms around her, burying her face in his chest, bracing for the crush of the ceiling. But the final strike never came. The deafening roar of the bombardment abruptly shifted into a low, thrumming hum. Kalen opened his eyes, coughing through the thick cloud of dust. Above them, where through the gaping hole in the throne room's ceiling, the sky was lit with a blinding web of blue and gold light. Federation cruisers and hegemony dreadnoughts had broken their formations. Inspired by the raw, undeniable data bleeding across their comms, the opposing fleets had merged, locking their deflector shields together to form an impenetrable umbrella over the spire. The extremists were cut off. The sky held firm. Kalen and Ilara climbed out of the archive into the smoking ruins of the Grand Hall. The treaty pedestal was crushed, but Ilara pulled a surviving datapad from the wreckage. Hands trembling, covered in the dust of her own palace, she signed the Solus Accord. She handed it to Kalen, who entered his command override, officially sealing the pact. The Cold War died right there, suffocated by the very truth that started it. When they walked out onto the shattered balcony, the Astris wind was cool, sweeping away the smoke. Above them, the sky was filled with integrated starships, humming a new, shared rhythm. Kalen looked down at the tactical plating on his chest. Slowly, his fingers worked the clasps, removing his military insignias and letting the metal pins drop onto the cracked stone. Ilara watched them fall. She reached up and unpinned the heavy ceremonial veil from her hair, letting the wind take the silk over the edge. They didn't need to hide anymore.